Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was the keynote speaker this year, and our Jason Delgado had a one-on-one interview with Buttigieg to talk about party strategy ahead of this year's midterm elections.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us and welcome to Florida.
Good to be back.
Yeah, well, look, I've got to ask you, and with respect, Florida is seen as a red state, and you are a star within your party, and you have a voice that resonates nationally. So then why come to Florida when other states are considered perhaps more competitive?
Well, I think there's no such thing as a permanently red state. And I think it's very important for Democrats to be reaching out everywhere, especially because right now I think we have a message that can resonate with a lot of independents and a lot of conservatives who don't like what they're seeing. Look, a lot of people believed Donald Trump when he said he wasn't going to get us into another war, and then he did. A lot of people believed Donald Trump when he said inflation would go down. It's actually higher than it was when he took office. So a lot of people asking questions. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to automatically trust Democrats, which is why I'm here trying to put out a message about what we would do and will do to make everyday life more affordable, to reverse the Republican cuts to Medicaid and to the Affordable Care Act, and to just get more money in people's pockets so they can get through everyday life.
Now, Florida is home to roughly 1.5 million more registered Republicans. Where do you begin with that? You mentioned the messaging, but still, that's a big mountain to climb.
Look, I grew up running and winning in Indiana. I'm not afraid of an uphill struggle. And what I found is that people will often vote in surprising ways if you can connect with them with a message that matters and the right kind of candidates. I've been really impressed to see a lot of candidates, including veterans, folks I'm supporting like Darren McCauley and Leila Gray, who've served our country in uniform and now want to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. I think when we have policies that more people agree with, candidates that people can get behind, then it just comes down to whether we do the work. And I see good candidates doing that work at every level of the ticket. And that's why I wanted to make sure I was here to be part of that and to be supportive.
And so it sounds like courting MPAs is absolutely a major key here for this race and
yes.
Moving ahead.
Absolutely. And look, there are a lot of people who think for themselves they don't vote automatically right or left, but they're seeing what's going on now and think, well, we at least need some kind of balance. We need some kind of check on an out-of-control White House that is, out there building a new gilded ballroom for dinners for the wealthiest people and retrofitting a jumbo jet, all this other stuff that's got nothing to do with making gas more affordable and diesel more affordable and food more affordable. So even people who maybe usually lean right, I find are open to voting for something of a split in Washington so that there can be some accountability.
Florida Democrats have long asked national DC for help, saying we need more resources, please come down to Florida. Is that the trick? I mean, is national going to come and help Florida?
Well, I think it's a good idea for national Democrats to try to be helpful, but really I think the best solutions are going to come from the ground up. And some of the most surprising results from Miami voters choosing a Democratic mayor there to the House district that Mar-a-Lago sits in, turning blue for a House candidate there. I think it really shows you that, frankly, Washington Democrats could learn a lot from the organizing that Florida Democrats are doing on the ground more than the other way around.
Once upon a time, Florida was a toss-up. I know you know that. It was a bellwether for the nation. It doesn't look like it's been that way in recent years. What happened? How did that happen so dramatically?
Well, part of that has to do with gerrymandering and the way that they're changing the rules. Look, Florida might lean a little bit right, but nowhere near the disproportion that you see in the state house to state senate here. And they're trying to create a congressional map where, maybe 6 out of 10 people you meet on the street in Florida would be Republicans, but it would be like 8 out of 10 House members. Why would that be? Well, because they don't want to have fair maps. If there were fair maps, they couldn't win. The policies are too unpopular. The tax cuts for the wealthy, the cuts to health care, the cuts to veteran resources are so unpopular that the only way Republicans are winning right now is to change the way that the lines are drawn so that they have an unfair advantage.
Let's imagine a world where Florida Democrats do indeed start chipping away here in the state. My question for you is, are there any seats or statewide races, anything that you see as particularly vulnerable in this cycle?
Well, I certainly think there's some extraordinary House candidates like Darren McCauley and Leila Gray who can surprise a lot of people. I think there's hope of making change in the state House and state Senate, but also, great statewide candidates. And, to see just how close it looks like that governor's race is, to see that the U.S. Senate race could be within reach, I think shows me that nobody should be writing off Florida. And I have noticed, in the last few years, it seems like each year, at least out of the last few cycles, things here get more and more competitive.
Obviously, the goal is to beat Republicans in a way, but there's also infighting on both sides of the aisle, but within the party at a national level here in Florida, there is infighting. There's a progressive faction, perhaps a more traditional faction. Where do you go on reconciling those kind of differences from within the party?
Well, I think we have to respect that different things are going to speak to voters in different parts of the country. What makes sense for Democrats in Brooklyn is probably different than what a lot of Democrats where I grew up in Indiana or live in Michigan now or here in Florida have to say. That's okay. We are a big tent, but there are certain core things we believe in. That this is not the time for tax breaks for the wealthiest corporations. It's time to give regular people a break. We believe passionately in making sure that we invest more and not less on healthcare, on education. There are things that knit this party together, from our beliefs about basic freedom and rights to our economic agenda. And then there are other things that people inside the party are going to disagree with. But when we have disagreements as a party, we hash them out, we debate it, we have primaries, that's fine. We don't try to shut down anybody who disagrees with us the way the president's trying to do.
You obviously served as the Transportation Secretary under President Biden. Here, I have a question for you. Florida, obviously among the largest states in the nation, we don't have a rail system quite like you see in other major states. And as long as I've lived here my whole life, frankly, that's been a conversation. Why doesn't Florida have it? What would it take for Florida to kind of make that sort of investment or see that change? I'll tell you this, North Florida doesn't have an Amtrak line. It's been out of service for quite a while. We've seen private lines coming in too. Just kind of, I mean, obviously you've sat at that desk. What's it going to take?
Well, look, I think it's okay, more than okay. I think it can be healthy to have a combination of public and private investment going into infrastructure. I think fundamentally it comes down to investment. And, you know, it's been now almost 20 years since, unfortunately, a Republican governor in Florida refused billions of dollars in support for rail because he didn't want to get caught cooperating with Barack Obama on something. We got to take the partisanship out, get the investment in, because there's no such thing as a Democrat or Republican train. Just like the truck stops that we were building on I-4 and the bridges we were improving and the airports we were fixing during my time as secretary right here in Florida, that was not a Democrat-Republican thing. That's just something that people need and want and support.
I know we're tight on time. My last question for you is, what is going to be your message, or what is your message for Florida Democrats and then Florida voters who might be on the fence, moving toward the election?
Well, I would invite you to join us to make change. Look, if you're perfectly happy with how everything is going in this country and in the state, that's one thing. But if you know things can be better, Democrats are offering a different way, a different vision, and a chance to have some checks and balances in this country. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be at war with Iran that the president promised wouldn't happen in the first place. We don't have to be paying these tariffs that cost families on average about $1,000 per family. We don't have to be putting up with cuts to healthcare, cuts to food stamps, cuts to education at the same time that they're doing cuts to the tax rate of the richest people in the land. We can do so much better than that. 2/3 of Americans agree. We just got to turn that into a durable majority. And if you voted for what's going on right now, I would say that your president and your governor have let you down. They don't deserve your support. We're asking you to consider something different.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for the time, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.